This is Doug DeMuro, and today we're going to talk about 9 new cars that could be way cooler. Here are 9 new cars that have come out, and they're disappointing. They could have been executed so much better, cooler, more exciting, just overall improved, but they weren't, and today I'm going to call them out. Let's do it.
Before we get started, are you ready for your next cool car? Sell your enthusiast car on Cars and Bids. Trading in your car to dealers means you aren't getting market value for your car, leaving you with less cash for your next fun car. Just look at our recent sales of these cool cars compared to current trade-in value. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is the trade-in offer, and this is the Cars and Bids result. Get started now on carsandbids.com. Sell on Cars and Bids and join the best community to sell your enthusiast car.
Okay, 9 new cars that could be way cooler. This is alphabetical. I haven't ranked these cars in order of wayness of cool potential. They are alphabetical, but they all could be better, and they should be. And so we begin in an obvious place with the BMW XM. This is one of the biggest automotive disappointments of the last decade, which is actually a shame because I think BMW is doing a lot of things right now. I know a lot of enthusiasts like to say, oh, BMW is screwing up everything. The cars are getting bigger. I think BMW is building the cars that its consumers actually want in large part. And they're still throwing enthusiasts a bone with a couple of manual cars, rear-wheel drive, 6-cylinder. I think they're doing a lot of stuff right. However, the XM is wrong. I think what happened here is that BMW saw the Mercedes G-Wagon as this 2-row SUV that was a flagship model in the Mercedes-Benz lineup. And it's hard to look at the G-Wagon sales and especially transaction prices and not sit there and say, we want to compete with this. BMW is behind Mercedes-Benz in this realm, no question. So they're thinking to themselves, how can we compete with the G-Wagon, come out with a flagship SUV that sort of sits above all the others and really make it desirable and appealing. But the problem is that Mercedes-Benz is able to do this because they have this history with the G-Wagon, this off-road credibility. It's the same reason people buy Range Rovers and Land Rovers. They have sort of this long history of off-road capability that gives credibility to this top-of-the-range model. BMW realizes they don't have that. What do they have credibility in? Performance. So they decide to come out with a performance halo SUV, and it falls flat on its face. It's way overpriced. It's not particularly attractive. The performance isn't even all that good compared to other BMWs, and it just got screwed up. How do I think they could have fixed it? Number one, I think BMW's Halo car should be a sports car. BMW is terrified of making a Halo sports car because they've done it several times and it has never been a success. The M1, the i8, the Z8, they were never successes. But I would argue that all 3 of those cars were esoteric in a way they didn't need to be. The i8 did not need to be a 3-cylinder plug-in. The M1 did not need to be a Lamborghini collaborated. They need to make a mid-engine, powerful 6-cylinder manual R8, an Audi R8 is what they need to make, honestly, as a good Halo sports car. And that would be a success. But BMW is they're kind of skittish about these Halo sports cars because they haven't done well, but I think they've never really tried it correctly. And doing a Halo SUV instead, it makes sense. Mercedes makes a ton of money with it, but this was executed wrong. If you were going to do a Halo performance SUV, I guess it's a possibility, like an Urus type competitor. This thing is just nowhere near as appealing. It is not attractive enough. It is not fast enough. It's not desirable. I think they actually would have done better if they had tried to make an off-roader and given it real off-road capability. I think they could have bought themselves that credibility within a few years or maybe a couple generations. Certainly they have no credibility from this vehicle. Okay, next car that could be cooler, undoubtedly, no question. The next one on this list deserves to be the Chevy Blazer. Chevy Blazer. Jeep sells hundreds of thousands of Wranglers every year. Off-road, tough. Ford sees that. They come out, they say, we're coming back with the Bronco. Now they're selling tens of hundreds of thousands of Broncos every year. The Toyota 4Runner sells hundreds of thousands of units every year and has for decades now. Body on frame, rough and tumble off-roader. Chevy sees this happening and they say, we're going to bring back the Blazer, a storied full-size SUV nameplate. We're going to bring back the Blazer and we're going to make it a front-wheel drive crossover, thereby assuring that the Blazer's status would forever be relegated to rental car fleets and people getting good lease deals. The Blazer is one of the most disappointing cars on the market today, and it could have been way cooler. GM does such a great job engineering so many great cars. They knew what the market wanted. These off-roader SUVs, they've been popular for so long now. The Raptor, the G-Wagon, the Bronco, the Wrangler, the 4Runner, all the TRD Pro vehicles. They're such a massive market segment, and Chevy just can't make it work entering this segment. They're just too afraid to actually step in. And this Blazer is such a good example of business reluctance, where you see something developing that you probably should be a part of, but you're afraid. What if the trend dies? What if we spend development dollars and then the trend dies just as we get in the market segment? Well, great. So instead you're not a player and you get laughed at. And the Blazer, they'll point to sales figures for the Blazer. That's what these automakers always do when I make fun of their cars. Let's talk about profit. No one's ever really willing to publish those numbers. Like, how much money do you actually make from this car? I think that almost every Blazer I see has rental car license plates. Like, how much money are you actually making selling this thing? Let's talk about Ford Bronco profit. I have a suspicion the numbers would be very disparate. I don't want to hear your sales figures. I want to hear the actual dollars that you're earning. And the Chevy Blazer doesn't earn much, and it shouldn't. Okay, next up, 9 cars that should be way cooler. This is an obvious one, but I have to include it on the list since this is what the list is. The Dodge Charger. Oh, what a huge mistake. Canceling two of the most successful products on the market, the Challenger and the Charger, and switching to an electric car with fake engine sounds. I mean, it almost is like a joke. It's almost the kind of joke that you would tell, oh, they'll never do that. It's absurd, on a Simpsons episode. But in fact, that is what they have done. The new Dodge Charger, I actually think looks pretty cool. But it isn't. Now they've already come out and said, we're gonna put a gas engine in the car. And that's gonna go on sale here actually pretty soon. I just got invited to the press launch in a couple of months. And so that makes it more appealing, certainly. And I actually think it looks good. I believe it or not, I think that the look of it, sort of going after some of the look of the later muscle car Chargers rather than the early Challengers and Chargers, I think that was a cool idea and they executed it well. Just the electric component was really poorly thought out. And not only was it poorly thought out, they were canceling one of the most beloved cars on the market, replacing it with this electric car, but then the timing was bad, right? Like the Trump administration comes in, EV incentives are gone. There's a lot of bad mouthing of EVs now, and the car makes even less sense in today's world. And so it's bad timing. It's a bad car. I think that they're going to figure out how to make it a good car. I think putting a 6-cylinder in it, a V8, those are smart moves, and the car will improve as a result of that. But right now, it is definitely a new car that could be way cooler. Okay, next up on this list, here's some obvious stuff. 2 cars from Honda. That very clearly deserve to be here. First off, the new Honda Passport. Honda, I love Honda's main products, which are the HR-V, the CR-V, the Pilot, the Civic, the Accord, and the Odyssey. All 6 of those cars are segment leaders. They're either the best car in their segment or the second best car in their segment. I recommend them to everybody. They are fantastic cars that you should buy. Other than that, Honda just can't figure it out. And they've been trying to figure it out in other segments for a while, and sometimes they have flashes of brilliance like the Element and the S2000, but usually they then don't know how to follow up those cars. They go away. They're just not sure what else to do to grow the brand. And the Passport is probably the best example of Honda's own business reluctance to go after clearly defined popular market segments. Same problem with the Blazer. You see the 4Runner, the Bronco, the Wrangler, all massive sales success. The TRD Pros, the Raptors, etc. The market loves off-roaders right now. And Honda knows that and they see that, and so they come out with the Passport 8 years ago, and it's just a smaller Pilot, and they try to pitch it with marketing as off-road capable, but it's laughable and everybody sees right through it. Well, now there's a new Passport, and again they've tried to prove, hey, this is a off-roader type vehicle. And they've done a good job of adding some enhancements, tow hooks and all-terrain tires, improvements that the original one didn't have. The only problem is it isn't an off-road vehicle. It still is, it doesn't have a locking differential. It's still a unibody, non-body on frame. It doesn't have that much ground clearance. It's not all that capable. And they know that. And they're trying to go as far as they can without actually spending the money to create a true off-road vehicle like a 4Runner or like a Bronco. And frankly, sales figures tease this out. Passport sells in a fraction of the sales numbers that the 4Runner does. Now, Honda would argue, well, it also cost us a fraction of the money to develop the car, considering it's based on the Pilot. And I would argue that's your problem. You're not willing to spend the money to really go after like a real try at this segment or at so many other segments. Honda's just unwilling to like really commit resources to, they want to grow, they want more sales, they want more profit, but they're unwilling to commit resources. And so they're stuck in sort of this decision paralysis. I don't know, I'm not really sure what to do kind of situation. And it's been a problem for them for a long time. And the Passport is, I think, emblematic of that issue. They see the market segment. You can see they want to enter the market segment, but they're scared to do it. And then there's the Honda Prelude, which is the next car on our list of cars that could be way cooler. Prelude is a beloved car from the 80s, 90s, all the way through, I think, 01. People loved it. It was basically a front-wheel drive sporty coupe that was fun. It wasn't rear-wheel drive. It wasn't high power, but it was like a fun little car that you could afford and that you could have fun in. That was the Prelude's thing. And so after a 25-year hiatus from the market, Honda brings the Prelude back in one of the worst ways I have ever seen bringing a car back. The styling is cool. They basically took a Civic hybrid and made it an attractive two-door coupe. It is a nice looking car. Everything else was pretty much poorly executed. It has suspension components from sportier Honda models that make it steer better than a Civic hybrid. And obviously the style, the design is cooler looking than a Civic hybrid. And so you figure that's a $4,000 or $5,000 benefit over a Civic hybrid. Unfortunately, the Civic hybrid starts around $30,000 and Honda has priced the Prelude around $43,000, which is infringing on the territory of the Nissan Z, the BMW 2 Series, the Ford Mustang. And Honda's competitor to these vehicles is a front-wheel drive, automatic transmission, 200 horsepower hybrid with the same drivetrain from the Civic that you can get for 25% less money. It makes absolutely no sense to anybody in any situation. And I think it's one of the worst new automotive launches that I've been around as an industry observer to actually see. It is almost impossible to justify buying a Prelude given what else is in the market. You have to be just an unbelievable diehard Honda fan, or you have to be getting such a great deal that it actually becomes what it probably should cost, which is somewhere in the $34,000 to $36,000 range. Although even then, to me, a 200 horsepower front-wheel drive hybrid is a tough justification at that price point, especially considering what you can get on the used market, but also the BRZ, the ND Miata, or cheap Mustangs. How do you justify that? It makes no sense to me. And it's another good example of Honda being too cautious. They didn't give the car enough power or performance or excitement to distinguish it from the Civic. They just weren't able to actually take this car and make it something that is really, really desirable to a lot of consumers. And yet they're trying to get all the money for it and they won't. And that is certainly a car that could be cooler. Okay, next up on the list of new cars that could be cooler. I'm going to get some hate for this, but I got to say it, the Lamborghini Urus could be cooler. The Urus sells well. It brings all the money. It's been a huge success for Lamborghini. I think there's a lot of great things about it. It performs well. It is very fun to drive. It's an exciting car. However, this is my problem with the Urus. Lamborghini sports cars are the king of the road in terms of sports performance. And so when they announced Lamborghini's coming out with an SUV, I think the thing that makes sense to me is that Lamborghini would come out with a vehicle that is the king of the off-road in terms of SUV capability. That's, to me, what the Urus should be. But unfortunately, they decided to make the Urus SUV like a sporty performance, which makes sense. I guess that's what people want. I mean, here I am again advocating for this car should be another off-road SUV. However, Lamborghini does have a history here. They made the LM002 back in like 1990, and it was kind of the king of the off-road world. And back then, you could buy a two-car solution from Lambo, the Countach and the LM002, and have the two kings of their respective domains. And I've always been a bit sad that Lambo didn't go out and say, hey, look, we already own the road with our cars. Let's own the off-road. And I think they really could have done that. Now, it would have been hard because the platform doesn't exist in Volkswagen Group. The reason the Urus is what it is because they already had the Cayenne and the Audi RSQ8 doing their things. And so the Urus was able to kind of come in with just a little bit different, exterior and interior styling and add just a ton of profit. I mean, it's obviously a huge, huge success. But I never really have come to like how the Urus looks. I think scaling up the design of the sports cars into an SUV didn't really go all that well. And I've always been a little disappointed at its lack of off-road capability. Now, the funny thing is, Lamborghini a few years ago comes out with a off-road version of their Huracan sports car called the Sterrato, and you think, okay, well, they're doing an off-roader Huracan, an off-roader Urus makes so much sense. Like, at least do a trim level that's like, wide fender flares, big all-terrain tires, light bar, and they still don't do that. So there's an off-road version of the sports car, but there's not an off-road version of the SUV, which makes so much more sense, but they haven't gone down that road. And so I'm just disappointed. The Urus is plenty cool. It's fast, it's fun, it's exciting, it's popular. There's a lot of great things about it. I just wish that Lambo would, if they weren't going to make an off-road vehicle like a Raptor or a G63 competitor, at least make an off-road version of this and say, hey, this is for, going over the sand dunes in Dubai. Like, this is something that you can really enjoy off-road because we want to conquer that world too. And kind of bring back some of the spirit of the LM002. Okay, next up. New cars that should be cooler. This is actually a new car that I love dearly, but it could be cooler, and that is the new WRX. I love the new WRX. Came out about 4 years ago, and I have been one of its biggest fans. People don't like how it looks. I love how it looks. I think the looks have totally grown on me, and I'm really into it. I love how it steers and handles. I think that's great. I love the powertrain. I always say it's potent. It has amazing acceleration from basically any RPM. It's really easy to get power in that car. I love everything about the WRX. On its face, the WRX itself could not be any cooler. However, I do think that the WRX lineup could have been enhanced. Overseas, Subaru sells a hatchback version, which we used to get here in the States, but they don't bring it to us in the US. It's called the Levorg. They don't bring it to us in the US. We don't get it, and so we only get the WRX sedan, which is a shame. Obviously, it eliminates a body style that would add some practicality and a body style that's very popular right now with enthusiasts. The M5 Touring, the E63 wagon, the GR Corolla, the Focus RS, the GTI and Golf R, like a lot of popular performance cars have either gone completely hatchback wagon only or are now selling more units of their hatchback or wagon than they do of their sedan. The Jetta GLI does not sell even close to the GTI. The M5 sedan is maybe 1-to-1. The E63 wagon outsells the sedan. The RS6 Avant is only sold as a wagon. You get the point. The GR Corolla, there's no sedan. This is what the market wants, and it's a shame Subaru didn't do that. And then it's a shame that Subaru didn't do an STI version. I love the new WRX, and I will always wonder what this platform and what this car could have been if there was an STI. I think they could have made it really cool looking. I think it would have really exploited this platform to the best degree possible, giving it even more power, even better, sharper handling, more precision. I think really could have been an amazing experience, and I'm just sad that never happened, because I think that this is dynamically the best WRX we've ever had, and unfortunately it's also the least filled out model range of WRX, and it's just so sad. They could have gone one step further, or at least one more generation, and done an STI and done a hatch and really kind of ended their WRX thing with a bang, because it's clear they're kind of sunsetting it based on just how much they've pulled back from the model line. But they didn't do that, and I think that's sad. And I love the new WRX, but it could be cooler. Okay, next up, cars that could be cooler. Here's an obvious one: the Toyota Land Cruiser. I'm not going to talk too negatively about it. I've done whole videos complaining about the new Land Cruiser. I love the Land Cruiser as a name. I'm very disappointed in the modern Land Cruiser. And I will say, the people who are buying the modern Land Cruiser have kind of proven me right. The Land Cruiser, to those of us who are enthusiasts of the brand, I'm going to be a purist here, was always the best Toyota SUV. It was the most capable, the largest, could carry a bunch of people, drove in an effortless manner. It was an incredibly competent vehicle in every regard. The new Land Cruiser is none of those things and trades on the name of the old Land Cruiser, and that's what buyers of the new Land Cruiser want. They want, oh, the Land Cruiser. Yeah, I got a Land Cruiser. No, you don't. No, you don't. You have a pretend Land Cruiser that has nothing to do with what used to be the Land Cruiser. And that's, by the way, why the best versions of the 200 series Land Cruiser are selling for all the money right now. It's because the new Land Cruiser, to people who really know, the new Land Cruiser is not a Land Cruiser. It is a 4-cylinder, small, does not drive in an effortless way, feels like a cynical Toyota rebadge because that's what it is, kind of vehicle. The Lexus GX, which is basically a Land Cruiser with slightly different bodywork, is much more desirable. 3-row seating is available, a V6 is available. The new Land Cruiser is the Land Cruiser Prado. It is a second-rate Land Cruiser. And I will say that the Lexus LX still gives us the ability to get a 300 series, the new Land Cruiser here in the States. And I think the new LX 700H is really the Land Cruiser. A lot of Toyota Land Cruiser people, oh, the V8 is not, I'm never going to not have a V8 in my Land Cruiser. Well, when I was a kid, the Land Cruiser was a 6-cylinder. And when the V8 ones came out in 98, everybody was like, oh, that V8, that's not what it should be. The Land Cruiser is a straight 6. It always has been. Well, now you can get a 300 series with a greatest V6 Toyota's ever made, which is the twin-turbo hybrid one, 460 horsepower. That's a Land Cruiser. Your little Prado thing is not. And I think the fact that so many people are buying it because of this name and they want to be associated with this name, it's like the M340i. That's what it is. And every time I see one, I think, you want people to think that you are an enthusiast and an off-roader and you're richer than you are. And I, a Land Cruiser guy, I'm not buying it. And it's such a shame that we didn't get the 300 here in the States. Finally, last car on my list of 9 new cars that could be way cooler, the Volkswagen ID Buzz. And I got to tell you, this is a surprise to see on this list because the ID Buzz is one of the coolest cars on sale. However, it could have been cooler and it is not selling. And the two things are tied to each other. Volkswagen product strategy in the United States has for years been a story of overthinking. We only want the long wheelbase Phaeton. The GTI, certain colors. Let's change the names of this and that to try to make it. Let's not do the Corrado. Let's not do the Scirocco. There's so much Volkswagen the U.S. market needs this. Trust us, we know. And the ID Buzz is probably the best example yet. In Europe, they sell a short wheelbase, small engine ID Buzz that would have been in the US probably a $50,000 car. The US market product planners were like, no, we don't want that. We only want the long wheelbase, full fat, big boy ID Buzz. And the result of that is we get the best ID Buzz. It's the long one. It is the most practical. It has the most power. It's great. But it costs $70,000. And it's just a stupid and ridiculous concept considering that it's a minivan. No one wants to pay that. Volkswagen says, well, it's our halo car. And it is. I see them on the street. I still turn my head. The car's been out for a year. They are so cool. But they would have been cooler at a more affordable price point, and frankly, I think the short wheelbase body style looks better. And truthfully, I have a suspicion they're not going to end up selling that many of these to traditional minivan buyers. If you're looking at a minivan, the Sienna and the Odyssey and the Carnival and the Pacifica are just so much more competent in terms of overall capability, in terms of interior versatility and practicality. You're never going to look at the Buzz and say, I'm going to surrender a lot of practicality and spend $25,000 more just for this ID Buzz. The Buzz is always going to sell to people who want to kind of make a cool statement. And unfortunately, and so the short wheelbase would have been perfect for those people. And a lower price point, you would have gotten more of those people. But that's not what they did. And so the result is that as cool as the ID Buzz is, Volkswagen has screwed themselves over in a way by just making it too expensive, long wheelbase only. It's just a shame. If that had been a $50,000 car and the short wheelbase, I don't know that it would have been a massive hit even then, but you definitely would see more of them. It would definitely have a bigger halo car effect, and I think they would have sold more to the kind of people they're trying to sell them to. And it certainly would have given Volkswagen more goodwill. And it's such a shame after all these years of talking about bringing back the bus, they finally do it. They do it in the best way possible, better than almost all their stupid concept cars they had showed for years before this. And yet, they just fall short of what they actually should have done for the US market. And of course, they're going to now say, oh, well, it was a failure and we tried and you didn't buy it. Well, we didn't buy it because you gave us the wrong one and it was too expensive. Try different. Anyway, there you go. 9 new cars that could be cooler. Some of those cars are pretty cool, not the Chevy Blazer, but they all could be cooler if they would just listen to Doug.